Bien, estamos en nuestra tercera entrevista con importantes personalidades del mundo de la política y la cultura, y en esta oportunidad tengo una entrevista muy especial en lo personal, en lo político, con un gran compositor, con un gran artista a nivel internacional, con el gran y querido Roger Waters, y estamos obviamente muy emocionados, y yo particularmente emocionada, muy nerviosa además por esta entrevista, así que le damos la bienvenida a Roger. Han pasado 9 años, creo yo, desde que nos vimos en el Estadio Nacional, en el concierto de The Wall. Tuvimos la oportunidad de establecer una conversación eh, donde tú no hablabas español, yo no hablaba inglés, y creo que hasta el día de hoy eso no ha cambiado, y por eso estamos aquí mediante traductor con nuestro querido amigo Pablo López, que nos está ayudando. Así que te doy la bienvenida, Roger, y muchas gracias por concederme parte de tu valioso tiempo para esta entrevista desde acá, desde Chile. Bueno, hay cosas que no han cambiado mucho desde ese concierto, que tuve el privilegio, y te lo agradezco mucho, Roger, de haberme invitado presenciar los ensayos de esos dos conciertos. De verdad fue un momento muy importante en mi vida, estoy muy agradecida de esa oportunidad, porque además el contexto político y social dio para poder conversar eh, eh, muy profundamente, aunque en un breve tiempo, sobre la situación de la educación en Chile y la lucha que estaba dando desde el 2011, incluso antes, el movimiento estudiantil por el derecho a la educación. Y como te decía, han pasado 9 años, pero sigue una batalla muy importante del pueblo de Chile y de los estudiantes por cambiar el estado de cosas. Hace poquito además tú diste una entrevista para referirte a Chile, y para nosotros fue muy importante tus palabras, porque de alguna manera señalaste que con eh, el gobierno que teníamos, el manejo de la pandemia, la situación de la desigualdad, los estudiantes y la juventud probablemente volverían a salir a las calles.
Well, it was when I was doing the Wall show, it's 11 years ago, is it now? Okay. When I was doing the Wall show, during that visit, I went and spoke to Piñera, who weirdly enough was president then, as he is now. And so I remember doing a radio interview then where I told people how he had sat in the palace and lied to me, to my face, lied through his teeth. I remember him well, and it came as something of a surprise that he was re-elected last year. But it's not a surprise that the students and others are back in the streets. Because, as I said in my new recording of Victor Jara's song, which I put out the other day, all rats smell the same, and Piñera is a rat. And so the fight goes on. Am I surprised that 11 years later, nothing much has changed? Not really. 11 years is obviously the blink of an eye in terms of social movement. However, do I think it'll be another 11 years? It'll be the same? No, I don't. I think that the global resistance, based upon the work you were doing then and whatever, is growing, and we see the changes happening all around us every day. But the big changes, they happen very, very suddenly. Something builds up and you reach a tipping point. It may be that we've reached a tipping point of sorts, in that it is now more visible to us whether capitalism or some kind of more socially conscious economic system works better, and it's become entirely clear to anybody who is not blinded by the propaganda that Bolivarian revolution provides a better chance for us to live together in the future, and that so that all the Friedman neoliberal economic bullshit that brought Pinochet to power in 1973 is still bullshit. It was completely untenable in its beliefs then, and it still is. But it has 400 years of settler colonialism behind it, pushing it, trying to maintain the myth that there are masters and slaves, and that's okay. It's not okay. And the myth has been bust, but it takes a long time for the truth of that to settle in. And but it is settling in. Now, whether it'll settle in quickly enough to save this fragile planet from the horrific attack of capitalism upon it, which is destroying it faster, really. The tide is coming in faster than we can put the sandbags along the seafront, as we know. But I am emboldened and cheered by the fact that at least a few people seem to be taking notice, and also by the immense bravery of the students and other protesters in the streets who are standing up and at risk of their lives and certainly their eyesight, where you are, where they're shooting the eyes out of kids on the street in Santiago, to say so, and they will not be told no. And so when the coronavirus pandemic eases, or when things change, it'll be interesting to see whether we go back to status quo or not. We can't go back to status. If we go back to status quo, we all die. It's over. So I'm somewhat encouraged and optimistic. As you know, I'm quite active in a general global movement towards the idea that human rights are important, and that the Universal Declaration in Paris in 1948 was an extremely important move by the fledgling United Nations to express our capacity to understand that there is only one race, the human race, that we're all Homo sapiens. There might just be that much Neanderthal. I think I've got a bit in me. But basically, we're all the same, So, but this is very hard to convince people of that because we look so different. But it's true. We know it to be true. If there was a God, which there isn't, I would thank him for science. So I like empirical data. So I like something that I can smell and think, that's kind of real and true and very, very important, because myth and fairies at the bottom of the garden and life after death and all of that is a huge impediment to being able to work together one with another. I nearly said, I know I'm in a minority. I'm probably in a minority in Chile, and definitely I'm in a minority in Poland. But in a lot of countries now, the ratio between those of us who are agnostic or atheist and those of us who think Jesus is going to save us, or someone else, it doesn't really matter, is the gap is reducing at a very high rate as people go, whoa, I'm not sure I want this to be the driving factor. I don't necessarily have to score a goal, which a lot of footballers still seem to think.
Que no basta con rezar, como se dice acá. que es muy importante lo que dice Roger del acercamiento de posiciones entre ateos y creyentes, dado las desigualdades que se profundizan todos los días, más y más con el capitalismo, con el neoliberalismo radical que tenemos, por ejemplo, en nuestro país, y eso hace que materialmente uno se dé cuenta, ateo, cristiano, marxista, etcétera, que hay mucho abuso, mucha opresión, mucha desigualdad y también mucha mentira. Y quisiera volver al tema de la mentira, porque la mentira también es una realidad. Y lo pregunto porque quisiera volver al tema de los gobiernos y el manejo, por ejemplo, de la pandemia, eh, pero a propósito de cómo tú viviste la mentira y lo que significa para ti la mentira, que crea realidad, que crea discurso, que crea percepciones, y que obviamente determinan elecciones de gobiernos que manipulan a la población y que vienen lamentablemente de liderazgos incluso tan importantes como presidentes de la República. Tú tuviste una experiencia cercana con la mentira al tener esta reunión que fue un hecho muy polémico en nuestro país con el presidente Sebastián Piñera en su primer gobierno. ¿Qué te pasa a ti con la mentira, con la propaganda, con el manejo de los medios de comunicación que manipulan y construyen realidad a su favor?
Well, how do you deal with the lie? Well, you recognize it, first of all. If you can, you expose it, which I did in Santiago 11 years ago. I said, the guy just lied to me. For instance, even now, 11 years later, I remember that he was talking to me about police violence towards the students. And he said, I want you to know this. There were 1,300 incidents of injury during those student riots and and 1,100 of them were to policemen.
Increíble.
You know, and you go, you really think I'm stupid? But they do, or they don't. It doesn't matter that what they're saying is patently a blatant, open lie. They just say it. And this is what we're discovering with Trump and with all politicians. They've been doing it for, not all. That's not true. Not all politicians. Some politicians are genuinely good people who believe in human rights and so on and so forth, and believe in a welfare state and believe in looking after, believe that their job is to govern the people who they've been elected by, to govern them wisely for the benefit of everyone in society. You know? And there are people like that. There are. It may well be that Allende was such a politician. Who knows? You know. But so what do? You realize that and you ignore it. You don't listen to it. I never read a newspaper. I live in the United States. There's absolutely no point. It's all lies. All of it is nonsense. It's just the narrative that the ruling class want to propagate. So I don't do that. I get my information from online blogs, from people who I trust to be the people you're talking about, who don't lie. They at least speak the truth as well as they know it. They depend upon empirical data, like I was talking about. We were talking about religion a few minutes ago, and you said it's not enough to pray. I love that the evangelical right in America from time to time do experiments where they get a lot of people to pray for something because they want to show that prayer works, that God hears your prayer. And of course it doesn't, and it never works. And their experiments always come to nothing. Because what? They're just showing that, the absurdity of their position, really. Anyway, that's a side issue. That's a side issue. What do you do about the lying? Nothing. You do. You tell the truth. You tell the truth. That's all. Like we do. We tell the truth, right? We three in this room, we tell the truth. As far as we know, they are connected in a way whereby they switch off their ability to care about the truth. They don't. They care about how to achieve their ends. The end that they want, that Pinheiro wants to achieve, is for him and his ilk to become more and more powerful and more wealthy. That is the end to which they subscribe. A philosophical notion like what might or might not be true is completely irrelevant to them. They don't care about the truth. And neither do most theologians either. Couldn't care less. They're not like my life, my position is that I like the metaphor of the ocean with the platform, you know, with the dock running out into it. And I love the idea that the ocean is sort of unknown, and it's okay that there's unknown stuff out in the ocean. And science builds the dock out into the ocean. We understand more and more and more and more, but we never get to the end of it. And that's okay, so long as we go to the end of the dock and go, so that's it. Not that we sit in church to be told what's at the end of the dock. We go and find out what is at the end of the dock? What does all the evidence point to? And I think that's better than faith, and certainly better than prayer. You can't pray for human rights and peace. It doesn't work. We know prayer is irrelevant. It just doesn't work. But we also know that religion has been used by the ruling class for the last 2,000 years at least, and probably for the last 100,000 years. We don't know what the roots are of it all, in order to persuade the ones who do all the work, you know, the serfs, that this is God's plan. God wants you to work for the nobility, and essentially for God, because there's God, the clergy, the nobility, and then the people who actually do the work. Oh, and the army. Sorry, I forgot the army in between. So, and this is the lie that has been sold, that this is God's plan, that it should be like this. And what you get if you do all the work is the promise of a place in heaven after you've worked yourself to death, or they've killed you because you decided that you didn't like this idea or this plan. You know? So it's complicated. Maybe I shouldn't spend my whole time railing against the Catholic Church or any of the churches. It's not just Catholicism, except Catholicism is useful because Katholos means universal in Greek, which is where the word comes from. It's meant to be the all-encompassing, correct version of Christianity, and consequence should be adopted by everybody, and then everything would be all right. Yeah, tell that to the Spanish in the 16th century. There is an antidote, of course, to all this authority. Religion is authoritarian. It's an authoritarian construct to control the situation, to control the system or whatever. The antidote to authoritarianism is love, because authoritarianism doesn't care about the rights of the individual human child, and love does. Love is, and I'm not, and when I say love, I'm talking about whatever that indefinable thing is that we all know the smell and the taste of it, that brings us the thing that in English we call joy. It makes us feel joy, and we feel joy when we express our love. I mean, it's when we express our love for anything. It can be anything, but the greatest and most important love that Homo sapiens has is its love for each other. And when you express your love for somebody who is not your son or daughter or neighbor or what, but for somebody else who can live on the other side of the planet with apparently entirely different history of thing, that is what brings you the greatest joy to your life. And that is why this global movement, which is particularly focusing on indigenous people and the pain that the people who were native to most of the globe before the Europeans came and fucked everything up for everybody, that we're focusing a bit now, not just on them, but on what they know, what they still know and teach their children about their relationship with this planet that we all have to inhabit, and which the settlers, with their Christianity, most of them, came in and destroyed that connection. I'm not saying that all the indigenous people all over the world had perfect societies. They didn't. I know there were sacrifices and blah, 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 blah. But by and large, they understood their relationship with the earth in ways that we have lost. And that's why we're destroying it, apparently without a care. And we do that by switching off the bits of our brain. We three don't, and neither do the millions of us who have figured some of this out or been taught it by wise people, because there are many wise people in the world, but they're silenced by the powers that be. The ruling class is silenced. Anybody who has a heart and who is prepared to share their feelings of love is silenced because it's inconvenient and prevents the ruling classes from maintaining their grip on the throats of the people of Homo sapiens, of the rest of us. So how do we get that off? By doing this, by talking to one another and expressing our love for one another and all our brothers and sisters, so that inwardly we weep every day. I only have to allow the word Yemen, say, to go into the bit of my brain that is working at the moment, and I well up, because the thought of being in any of those war-torn places, particularly in the Middle East, but all over the world, anywhere where the ruling classes are slaughtering people for profit, only for profit and power, is what makes me be active in whatever way I've been able to in the last however many years. Since my awakening, if you like, because the first half of my life, I had a sort of vague inkling that there might be something not quite right, but I couldn't put my finger on it, really. And now, maybe, it's not just because I'm older, because there are people who are young people, like student activists and people. I mean, I sort of was one of those when I was a kid. I walked from Aldermaston to London to say, nuclear weapons are insane, we must stop them, I heard Bertrand Russell in Trafalgar Square. I was part of that. And I got it I got it in a large part from my mother, who was a communist. So, and then when that all finished in 1956, which is when it finished in England, over the Russian invasion of Budapest. And the English Communist Party at that point went, well, because it was very it was attached absolutely to Russia. And so that, well, after that, it was the Labour Party. And so our house was a Labour Party committee room my whole life. That's kind of what it was. So I learned a lot from my mother. And I feel so lucky to have grown up in a household like that. Though I know many, many people who grew up in the opposite household and rebelled against it because they became party to the wisdom of other ways of thinking about things that totally contradicted Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher and all the other fucking arseholes in our past, you know. So I think, am I wrong or am I right? Are more and more young people and old people, middle age, becoming infected with the truth of love? I don't know. I hope so. Because if they're not, we're fucked. We're done. They're killing us. The ruling classes are killing us all fast, faster than it's sort of possible to imagine. I often say to people, you know, that moment when the lights go off for a second, it'll feel like a power cut, but it's an electromagnetic pulse, and it will mean that the Third World War has started and we're all fucking dead, and we'll all look at each other and go, wow, how did that happen? Duh. You've got nuclear weapons all over the world. Why? Why do we still have these things? It's insane. Why didn't we listen to Chomsky or Bertrand Russell or any of the wise men? Why didn't we go, you know what? They're absolutely right. This is insane that we've got this shit knocking around, waiting for an accident to happen. They should look at that picture of 6.2 or however much it weighed tons of nuclear weapon stuck in the ground in North Carolina. And the only reason it didn't, it was an accident. The plane fell out, a B-52 falls apart in the sky. 3 nuclear weapons dropped. 2 of them were unarmed. This one was armed and it didn't go off because some tiny electrical circuit failed. Can you imagine? That was in 1961. North Carolina. Imagine if that fucker had gone off. Boom, that was it. That was it. They would have they couldn't admit they'd made a mistake. They would have just gone, fuck it, let's go for it. And they would have bombed the shit out of Russia, and that would have been the end of the world. None of us would be here. This would be a frozen wasteland. And that wasn't the only accident. There'd been lots of them. We've come that close. I know you know this, but
¿cómo frenamos esto? Porque hay solidaridad, hay empatía, hay amor. Yo soy una convencida de que muchos luchadores y luchadoras sociales se mueven por amor, por mirar al otro y comprender y empatizar con su realidad de opresión, de postergación, de discriminación. Pero por más que nos mueva a veces el amor, también hay rabia porque te tratan de terrorista, porque te tildan de comunista, y eso ya tiene una connotación negativa para cualquier persona que levante la voz y indique con el dedo quién es el responsable o quiénes son los responsables de la injusticia. Cualquier persona que habla de capitalismo y los problemas del capitalismo también se le tildan de terroristas, incluso de personas que promueven el odio. O sea, la contradicción es tal que aquellas personas que se mueven por amor al prójimo, por amor al otro, por querer construir una sociedad más alegre, más igualitaria, esas personas las tildan como personas que promueven el odio entre las distintas clases. Y seguimos teniendo elecciones en Latinoamérica y en el mundo donde ganan las posiciones ultraderechistas, neofascistas, conservadoras. Los vemos acá en Chile, lo vemos con Bolsonaro en Brasil, lo vemos en Ecuador con Moreno, lo vemos en Estados Unidos con Donald Trump, lo vemos con Boris Johnson. En fin, o sea, ¿cómo frenar esto? Para construir realmente algo por primera vez distinto, no solamente en un país, sino que a escala global.
I don't understand the mystery. Rupert fucking Murdoch owns every newspaper in the Western world. He is one of them. So they're hand in glove. So this is just a narrative that has been sold by, if it, all you're doing is saying to me, oh, isn't it strange that 1984 is true, that the Ministry of Truth exists, that Big Brother controls everything. And it is no surprise that the final line of 1984 is suddenly Winston Smith realizes that the fight is over, so he can relax. And the fight is over. He loves Big Brother. So the protagonist, the fighter against it, the resistant in Orwell's novel, at the end of it, finds peace by giving in and becoming a servant of the state. And so, unfortunately, that is one of the bits of Orwell's novel that was so accurately predictive of the situation now. People believe it. If you give them a bucket of Kentucky Fried Chicken, they think everything's all right in the world. A, they don't realize they're poisoning you, and B, you go, oh, this tastes nice. So you end up drinking the Kool-Aid, and you become not completely dead like you would if you'd been with Jones in Guyana or wherever it was, but you're brain dead. You become brain dead. Most of the people in the country I live in are brain dead. And in many other countries that I don't live in, like Brazil, for instance, how the fuck do they get the people in Brazil to vote for Bolsonaro? How even a few of them, never mind half of them, well, they do it by using the church. It's huge, the influence of the church still. And they use exactly the same propaganda that is used in the United States and all over. That's how they maintain the fingernail grip that they've got on power. And when the propaganda isn't working well enough, they go in and kill people. They send in the troops, like Trump is doing in Portland and Chicago now. Unmarked vans taking people off the street. And they start killing people. So they will do but the main thing is the propaganda. Like you say, they've been taught communists are bad and that communism has nothing to do with love. And if you were to say, who are the doctors going around the world saving people, volunteering? Fucking Cubans, that's who they are, or Chinese. They're one of the two. Those are the countries that are sending doctors around the world to help their fellow human beings, because they have been taught that love is the message, and they learned that from Che or whoever it was. That's who they're following. There's the bits of Che's story about the leper colonies and things, motorcycle Doris or whatever, that none of the people who complain about communism would have read. They have no idea, that he was a doctor and blah, 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 blah. And they've no idea now that the people who are trying to help them are the sons and daughters of the Cuban Revolution. But they are. So communism is far more allied to love or the principles anyway, than it is to authoritarianism. And capitalism is far more allied to authoritarianism than it is to love. And they just don't understand that. And I could tell them, I can sit here till I'm blue in the face and tell them that, hey guys, I'm telling you the truth. Prayer doesn't work. Love has to do with community and human rights and looking after your brothers and sisters. That means you have to have a welfare state. That means you have to spend money on education. That means you have to spend the money. That means you have to get rid of nuclear weapons and stop spending $1 trillion a year on going and killing brown people in foreign countries. That means you need to look after the kids who are living in ghettos. They are the ones they need the education. fuck Harvard, fuck Yale, fuck all that shit, fuck all your private schools and whatever. You need to pour money into public education and to educate your own kids, because they believe they're superior. They, the white kids, are white supremacists, just like you fucking are. And they need to learn that that's insane. That race is an absolute myth. It's a smokescreen to keep capitalism in place so that the very rich can get richer and richer and richer and richer and richer and richer. 150 or 60 billion dollars, Jeff Bezos. For what? What the fuck has Jeff Bezos ever done for anyone? Put books in cardboard boxes? I mean, it's crazy. It's absolutely insane. But they think, oh, well done. Oh, great. Now he can rule the world. He owns the Wall Street Journal and bloody Washington. Well, not, he owns Washington Post for sure. So he can become another Rupert Murdoch, and they can control everybody's mind and make sure that there are idiots in Brazil who think Bolsonaro has their best interests at heart. Bolsonaro is a raging sociopath, like Piñera. Piñera hides it a bit better, but not much better. But you can only go so far explaining things to people. Somehow we have to weave our way, we have to find our way into the levels of society where we can make a difference. Education, education, education. Money, all that money that is either being given to the wealthy to sit on in offshore tax havens, or being spent on weapons or this or that or the other, or what has to be poured into teaching children what it means to be human, who they are, what their history is, where the world came from, what it is. They're still teaching kids that God made the world in 7 days. What? They should be locked up. If you want to lock people up, lock them up. People who are trying to teach this crazed, insane bullshit to our children. Don't get me started. Anyway, yeah, education. Educate, and not just for little kids, in the universities. Let the universities be places where people can really learn to think about things, not churning out morons to go and work in TV, you know, or whatever they do. God knows what they do. Business school. Oh, send him to business school. Harvard Business School. You know, I've got a really good friend who's at Harvard right now, but he's in Harvard Medical School, and he's a friend of mine. I won't say his name because I don't want to embarrass him, but he's an ex-vet, and he got both his legs and one of his arms blown off in Afghanistan. And he's now in his 4th year at med school. And he and I had a conversation recently about, because he was doing, when the virus hit and everything closed down, they stopped, you know, doing surgery and all that stuff. They were doing lectures on ethics. And I went, wow, man, I bet that's an interesting conversation. To be in the American, learning medicine in the United States of America and start talking about ethics. Whoa, I'd love to be in that room. And we had a cool conversation. He said, yeah, it's pretty fundamental contradiction in terms, because medicine in America has nothing to do with looking after people. It has to do with making money. And that's all it's for. And obviously, well, you're a doctor, you know what I'm talking about. Medicine should be about helping your brothers and sisters if they need medical help. It's nothing to do with that in the state or England. Now the Americans have taken over the National Health Service. Well, they haven't quite, but they're trying to. Becomes nothing to do with healthcare. just about making money. That's why the system is so useless, why they're so bad at it. This is being shown in the States now. There's 66,000 new cases of coronavirus in America today. And what are they doing? Nothing. Nothing, just telling lies. Still lies, lie, 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 lie. And that's what they do, because they're not interested in anything but profit. And they've been doing it since 76, happily. And they wrote a constitution that made absolutely certain that there would never be democracy or anything even faintly like it in the United States. And so that's why this country is like it is. I can hear them now. Why do you live there? Why don't you fuck off back to Hampshire? I have my own reasons. I kind of, but I'm not here because of your political system or your system of social. I promise you that. I don't know. Anyway, I'm getting off track.
Porque se da la pelea desde adentro, dicen también.
You know, my job, if I have a job, my job is to not shut up. That's how I see that's my fucking job now, is to not, because sometimes one is tempted to go, ooh, I better not say that. They might, you know, whatever, or they might shut me up completely, or maybe I should be careful about it. Fuck it. No, I'm going to make as much noise as I can. And if they shut me up, they shut me up. But being shut up is important. It's like when people go, no, fuck it. And then they get put in prison. Well, I haven't yet, I'm happy to say, but those people who give up their freedom for what is right, and they know it's right, and it is right, and they're right. I admire them so deeply. Could I take it? I've no idea. But, you know, well, my Palestinian brothers and sisters, they get locked up in a heartbeat for nothing, constantly. Administrative detention. There's not even a faint pretense of law and order. There's no law. It's just a tyrannical, apartheid, authoritarian, brutal regime that does whatever the fuck it likes and gets away with it, murdering a whole group of indigenous people who've lived on that land for generations, for thousands of years. And the world sits by and goes, don't talk to me about it. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. What were you saying? What were you saying? It disgusts me. But that's why I have to keep shouting, obviously. As do you, and I know you do. Are we making progress? Yes, we are. We are making progress. Yes, we are.
Levantar la voz y, bueno, lo que vive Palestina es tremendo, es terrible, mucho tiempo, niños afectados por esta ocupación ilegal, un crimen de guerra, y todos sabemos que es así. Una ocupación de territorio que es ilegal, que es una invasión, que viola los derechos humanos del pueblo palestino y mujeres y niños lamentablemente involucrados, y para eso obviamente es muy valorable que haya personas como tú, Roger, y tantas otras más que levanten la voz y se muevan constantemente y sean activistas por pedir libertad al pueblo palestino y los derechos, ¿cierto?, de su soberanía y su reconocimiento como nación y de sus territorios. Y también, obviamente, en este contexto, yo tenía muchas preguntas, en verdad, pero yo creo que ya muchas me las ha contestado en esta intervención, no he tenido que preguntar, pero algunas cosillas me quedan por ahí. Y una de esas tiene que ver con el manejo de la pandemia, porque también el manejo de la pandemia, yo creo que uno podría dividirlo como en dos principales estrategias. Una de aquellos gobiernos que desconocieron las posibles consecuencias del coronavirus, privilegiaron en primera instancia la economía antes que la salud, y otros gobiernos, otros liderazgos invirtieron esto y pusieron realmente la salud antes que todo, establecieron cuarentenas preventivas los primeros días, garantizaron ingresos mínimos a la población para poder asegurar los confinamientos, y en este contexto obviamente que esas distintas maneras de abordar la crisis sanitaria también nos vuelven al punto inicial, que es decir, bueno, ¿qué queremos construir hacia adelante? ¿Qué tipos de sociedades, qué tipos de gobiernos queremos tener? ¿Qué tipo de políticas públicas? Las que privilegien la salud, la vida de las personas, que sean liderazgos que pongan en el centro el amor, la protección de los derechos humanos, o por otro lado vamos a seguir perpetuando y manteniendo sistemas capitalistas neoliberales que el principal objetivo es sacar renta, lucro, ganancia a costa de las personas. ¿Tú has podido hacer esa diferencia de estrategia? Me imagino ya, claro, con Bolsonaro, Donald Trump, Piñera, por un lado, pero por otro lado, en el marco de la otra estrategia, qué liderazgos, qué gobiernos, qué experiencias en el manejo de la pandemia tú podrías destacar? Un poco para ir visualizando también si tenemos alternativas, tenemos perspectivas, tenemos formas y experiencias distintas que nos den un grado de esperanza.
Will this pandemic make a huge difference to everything? Wouldn't it be great if it did, that something positive came out of this negative element in our lives where everybody's frightened, quite rightly, because it's a horrible disease and it kills lots of people. Yeah, it would be great. It would be great if we could learn from it. And I hope that we, the people, can learn from it, and that we, the people, will act collectively, because we are many and the ruling class are few, and to say to them no more. They will not give in without a struggle. We will see them marshalling their National Guards and their militarized police and whatever, and trying to shut us up and make us get back into the box where they've had us living for all of these years. So this is going to be a serious contest now between love and death, between life and death, and love and hate. So, and we willy-nilly are all party to it and will remain party to it. Can I look into a crystal ball and see what's going to happen? No, of course I can't. I've no idea what's going to happen, because the reality of all our lives before the pandemic was entirely clear to anybody with eyes and ears and a brain, and yet we did nothing about it because we feel powerless. We, the people, feel powerless. Not me. I don't, but I'm one of the lucky. I'm really, really lucky. I'm not worrying about where, you know, my next $200 is going to come from, because if I don't scrape it together by the end of the month, I'm going to be homeless. I'm pretty secure financially, and blah and blah and blah. But we keep coming back, this conversation, at the end of the day, to the same thing, which is Rupert Murdoch, the propaganda, the system, the acceptance of Bill Gates, the idea that it's okay for Bill Gates to run the world just because he sold you, me, and everyone else in the world computers for a lot less than it cost him to make them. He went, here, I've got this computer, I'll sell it to you. Well, how much is it? It's $2,000. Well, how much did it cost you to make? 300. Yeah, okay. And so now he's worth $120 billion, and he goes around the world being God now, because being God is having a lot of money or have power, and money buys you power. Do I admire that? No, I don't. I think it's kind of disgusting that just because somebody's got money, they should be able to decide who lives and dies. Actually, it's in my new song, The Bar. A homeless woman in this place called The Bar says, "Barman, I have a question. As one of many victims, tell me why a failed fat fucking landlord has been chosen to decide who should live and who should die." Obviously talking about Trump. But where am I going with this? This is the problem, that totally unqualified people are making life and death decisions for us all the time. That is where our social systems have gone wrong, which is why we have to work politically, which is why being in the Communist Party, if that works for you, or doing what I do, being a loudmouth, is so necessary, because we have to persuade the many not to pray to God, but to act collectively to demand a system that brings equality of opportunity to all our children, irrespective of our personal wealth. That is the only way forward, so that we have a chance to educate ourselves to a point where we can think beyond Kim fucking Kardashian and her bum, and think about things that are more important, like feeding each other and loving each other. Then we could move on to music and, you know, film and dance and what, and
De cuidarnos.
exactly.
La pandemia.
It's only in taking care of each other that joy resides. Joy resides. That is what joy is. Joy is the feeling you get when you stop in the street and say, "Are you all right?" And whoever it is talks, and you talk to them. It's the John Prine song. So if you're walking down the street sometime and see a pair of something ancient eyes, don't just pass them by and stare. Stop and say, "Hello in there, hello." That's love. That's what. Do not pass them by. I know it's an old Christian parable about the Good Samaritan and the passing by on the other side of the street. That bit of the Bible I adore. I think it's a very, very important story. The bad bit about it is that he has to have his moment on the road to Damascus to become a saint. No, you don't. It's in you. Sainthood is in everyone. It has nothing to do with God or Jesus. It's to do with the natural capacity that human beings have to empathize. Empathy is the most important word in the English language. I hope it is in Spanish too. You know, so what's going to will this epidemic? There were one or two indications where people would suddenly go out on the street and clap nurses or whatever. Well, up until it, certainly in England, nobody dreamt of giving a fuck about nurses. Who cares? Let them live on a shilling. They get paid nothing. They're the most important people in society, and they get paid zero, just barely enough to live on. You know why they go on doing it? Because they have empathy, because they love people, and it's important to them. There's a wonderful documentary made by John Pilger called "The Dirty War on the NHS," the National Health Service in England. And there's a scene in it where a nurse who has worked for 25 years in a hospital gets sold to an American company, breaks down in tears, because when the new company takes over, they tell her that her job is to empty beds, because the profit lies in the first 2 or 3 weeks that somebody's in the bed. And she breaks down in tears because she said she spent 25 years doing this job because it makes her happy, because she's helping. And now she's being told her job is to throw people out in the street so they can make more profit. And you go, oh, that is the saddest thing I've ever heard.
Tú estás hablando mucho de la empatía y eres muy bueno para hacer nexos con personas y hacer amistades a nivel mundial. Tenemos un ejemplo aquí. Pero tienes una relación también que es política, pero también de amistad, una relación afectiva con la historia de Víctor Jara y particularmente Joan Jara. Y hace poquito le agregaste una parte, cambiaste la letra de una canción de Víctor Jara, que es El derecho de vivir en paz. Y nos llamó mucho la atención el que señalaste en algún momento que la paloma iba a humillar al águila. La paloma, símbolo obviamente de la paz, la libertad, y el águila como símbolo imperial. ¿Nos podrías como contar un poquito más de ese cambio a la letra que hiciste del derecho de vivir en paz?
It's a few months ago. It's hard for me to remember what the trigger was. I heard Camila say Joanne's name then, you know, when she was asking the question. The last time I was in Santiago, back in the Estadio Nacional there, I actually played El Derecho de Vivir en Paz just off my iPhone because Joanne was there. She came, my drinking buddy. She came to the show, and it wasn't really for her because I wanted to hear his voice in that play. For years, I thought that was where he was held. I now know he wasn't. He was in a completely different building in an indoor arena that was also called the National Stadium back in the day. And anyway, that's another story. Why was I know why, because our gallant translator here, Pablo Lopez, who a doctor friend of mine in Santiago, had been out on the demonstrations. And so I'd got, videos and was getting the news from Santiago that they were shooting the eyes out of children in the demonstrations and things. And it makes me so angry. Driven by my anger, I thought, well, what can I do about this? And I guess, I don't know, maybe I just started figuring. No, I actually asked him. He sent me a video of him singing the first verse. He only knows one verse of it, Paul bloody Paul. And he sang it beautifully, I have to say. But so I checked out all the other lyrics, and then I thought, I could write verses and make a recording of it. So I did, very, very quickly, like in a few hours or whatever, and sent it back, and we got it because I did it as an act of solidarity with all the men and women and boys and girls and whoever were out on the streets protesting against Piñera, who's an old adversary of mine personally. He had my friend, the British ambassador, removed from his job after my interview. And so not that really matters. If you're a career diplomat like that, you expect one or two reversals in your career. They sent him off to West Africa. Out. John, what the hell was his? What the hell? It doesn't really matter. Anyway, that's why I did it. Just as an act of solidarity, which I do sometimes. I mean, but everything that I write and record is an act of solidarity. And it has been since maybe, certainly since I wrote the song Time. There's, you know, that line in that song, taking away the moments to make up a dull day, which describes me not being involved, not getting it. And then one day you find 10 years have got behind you. No one told you when to run. You missed the starting gun. Or that, I felt, I was 29 years old when I wrote that. And I thought, fuck me. This is it. Life is going by and I'm not really part of it. I'm pissing around playing the guitar or whatever I was doing, you know, and it's not enough. I need to be more engaged, and I didn't know quite how or why or what, but sort of since then, not consciously, but I know, looking back at my body of work, it's all about this. It's all about what we've been talking about today. That's the whole thing. None of it is about it. None of it is about anything else except my deep conviction that we need to be open to educating ourselves to understand and express our empathy for others. And that's all it is. And it's as narrow. So my narrow political stance being based upon the 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the fact that it should be applicable by law. That's how it comes down to that, because everything that happens, you think you can always come back to that and go, well, if that was agreed upon and was implemented with the weight of an accepted global law behind it that we all adhered to and obeyed because we'd agreed that as a global community, then that wouldn't happen. That would not happen. That could not happen in Santiago, Chile. The police could not be shooting the eyes out of children. It would be against the law. It is against the law. It totally contravenes all international law on human rights, but they do it, but they wouldn't be able to. The Israelis couldn't arrest people and incarcerate them for as long as they want with no trial. You know, you couldn't bomb busloads of Yemenis going to school. You couldn't behead people in Riyadh, you know, in Saudi Arabia. For what? Driving a car or not believing in Wahhabism or whatever it might be. If they're shooting people in the back of the head in China, who knows? I don't know if they are or not. I'm not accusing them of it, but you couldn't do it. They could, no, you can't. Sorry, hang on. Can you shoot people in the back of the head? No, you can't. It's against the law. It's against the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that we all signed up to in Paris in 1948. So it would solve a lot of problems. A lot of this stuff would be absolutely indefensible. And no, sorry, you can't do that. And wouldn't that make the world a better place? Yeah, it would. That's what we're fighting for.
En mi casa, mis papás, mi papá, mi mamá, que, bueno, también comunistas, igual que tu madre y tu padre, siempre me dijeron los derechos, y los derechos humanos especialmente, no es que existan a priori, no es que se tengan a priori, sino que se conquistan. Y yo creo que una de las grandes enseñanzas que hemos tenido todas las generaciones es que hay que conquistar nuestros derechos, porque no basta un tratado internacional, no basta una ley, hay que pelear por ello. Y hay que pelearlos, obviamente, motivados por amor, por la solidaridad, por la empatía, por el sentido de humanidad, pero hay que pelearlos. Porque si no, no nos hubiera pasado lo que nos pasó, lo que nos ha pasado en los últimos años, lo que nos sigue pasando hoy en día en nuestro país, que hay personas que han sido mutiladas por las fuerzas represoras del Estado, se le han quitado sus ojos, hay personas que todavía no tienen un techo para vivir, hay personas que son abusadas sexualmente por el aparato policial, Hay personas que se les obliga a trabajar cuando sabemos que ponen en riesgo su vida por contagiarse con el coronavirus. Y por lo tanto, insisto, una de las grandes enseñanzas es que tenemos que cambiar las cosas y hay que pelear para eso. Tenemos los tratados internacionales de derechos humanos, pero no sirven si es que el presidente de la República no es capaz y no quiere respetarlos, porque es un sector que ante la batalla constante de las grandes mayorías por tener sus derechos, por dignidad, por justicia, por tener trabajo, por tener salud, por tener educación, hay otros que se defienden y defienden sus intereses y son capaces de reprimir y pasar por encima de los derechos humanos del otro. Entonces, vuelvo al punto de la gran enseñanza que me dejaron mis padres, que es que los derechos no es que simplemente se tengan, sino que se conquistan. Te quería preguntar un poquito sobre eso, como que vienes también de una familia comunista. Qué gran enseñanza quizás dejó tu madre, a tu padre no lo conociste, pero hay una historia ahí familiar que creo que es importante, que a todos nos marca, a mí me ha marcado, y probablemente a ti también, y que son historias que las llevamos con nosotros y que siempre nos ayudan a pensar y a entender nuestro presente y comprender también cuál es nuestra tarea y lo que tenemos que hacer por delante.
Well, my mother, she taught me that the same lessons, but not. It doesn't sound as verbally or directly. You can't take human rights for granted. It's not anything that I remember my mother saying that to me. You have to fight for this and that. Maybe that was because my mother never had to. She came from a middle class family. There was plenty of money. She went to a private school. Her battles were in other areas, if you like. I'm just trying to make a reason why she wouldn't. However, that's how she lived her life. So her life was her life was an example to me. There's a story I often tell that is very important about my mother. Coming back one night from a meeting of the British China Friendship Association when I was maybe 6 years old, where we would watch old grainy films about the People's Heroic March in 1948 and the fight against the Japanese puppet government and blah, 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 and all of that. And the meetings were always in the Friends meeting house in Cambridge, which was the Quaker, it was the Quakers' place. They owned it, and they allowed these meetings to be had in there. I'll never forget my mother saying to me, "Do you know where we were tonight?" And I said, "Yeah, we were at a meeting place." And she said, "No, but do you know, it's the Friends meeting house. It's owned by the Quakers. Do you know what they are?" "No, Mum, I thought it was porridge oats you had for breakfast." No. She said, "They are a religious sect. They're Christian religious sect." And she said, "As you know, I'm an atheist, so I can't subscribe to their religious beliefs, but I want you to remember this. They are very, very good people." And I've never forgotten that, you know, because she taught me to see across, you know, boundaries between religions and things. They do the right thing. So that's sort of, and that's what my mother taught me. I've told this before, but she said to me, "You know, you're going," not when I was 6, but when I was a teenager, she said, "Through your life, you will come up against questions that you have to ask yourself, and you have to decide what to do, and some of them will be difficult. When you come across such a question that defines your actions, you must think it through, try and get all the information that you can from all possible angles, think about it, then you've done all the hard work. The easy part comes next. Do the right thing." Wow. You know, that still makes me feel kind of choked up that my mother said that to me when I was 13 years old or something like that. What a great lesson. See, it's easy. Get all the information, listen to all sides, figure it out, and then do the right thing. So that's it. I mean, it's that's what I got from her. She was crazy as a loon, of course, but she wasn't crazy about that. She was...
Qué bonito. Oye, para ir finalizando, lamentablemente, tengo todavía muchas preguntas, muchas preguntas. Me encantaría hablar de cada uno de los temas, las canciones, entrar más en el fondo de la situación de Palestina, contarte un poquito más de Chile quizá, pero ya tenemos que cerrar y voy a comentarte antes de hacerte una pregunta más quizá de carácter doméstico. Quiero comentarte que en Chile estamos a puertas de un cambio en la constitución política. Producto de la pandemia tuvimos que postergar y retrasar la realización de un plebiscito nacional por primera vez para que podamos cambiar la constitución que heredamos de la dictadura militar. Este plebiscito se va a realizar ahora a fines de octubre. Quiero que, me imagino que lo sabes, pero igual comentártelo en esta entrevista, porque necesitamos también palabras de aliento para ese proceso. Queremos que gane el apruebo a la nueva constitución, porque nos permitiría por primera vez en la historia de nuestro país que el pueblo, a través de una convención constitucional, una instancia popular, representativa, más allá del Congreso, redacte una nueva constitución. Sería un hecho histórico. Y por lo tanto también se abriría la posibilidad de que nosotros establezcamos también cómo asegurar en nuestra Constitución los derechos humanos, sociales, económicos, políticos, culturales que necesitamos.
Well, that's I didn't know that. How amazing! How extraordinarily revolutionary that idea is. The idea of giving the people the power to take part in the writing of the constitution of a country. I've never heard of such a thing. That would be a staggering move forward for the global attitudes towards political thought and also the sustaining a government. I'd be fascinated to know, maybe now's not the time, who and how the draft that people get to vote on gets written. But, you know, but just before, if you want to answer that question for me, that would be great. But I'm staggered by what you have to. I had no idea. Isn't it interesting that that news hasn't escaped from Chile and got to me? When you said that, in my brain, I went, un nuevo. Is that new? Is that a word? Un nuevo techo para Chile. A new roof. This is a new roof for your country, which would be amazing for you to have. I just wanted to say one more thing about parents, because I didn't mention Papa. I'm only a mama, because she was the one who was there in my life. My father, however, he is the dead embodiment of what she taught me, because he weighed everything up in 1943 because he was a conscientious objector and had not joined the army, refused to fight in the Second World War. He weighed everything up, listened to all the arguments going on in his head, and then he did what for him was the right thing. He went back to the army and he joined the army, and he went to Italy and he was killed 2 weeks later fighting the Nazis. So he is, you know, he is the glue. And it's the heroism of all men who fight for what they believe in. They're prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice, and they do it because of their love for their fellow human beings. So Anyway, that's my father. This I'd like to hear more about it. I'm excited about it. I am. Are you guys excited? Camila, is this an exciting idea? It sounds a bit like it might be open to interference from the powers that be, but tell me.
Así es emocionante para nosotros porque han sido décadas peleando contra esta constitución pinochetista heredada de la dictadura militar. Es una constitución que coarta la democracia y que impide la expresión de soberanía popular. Entonces, que por primera vez tengamos la posibilidad no solo de cambiar toda la Constitución, no solo reformarla, sino que cambiarla por completo, pero que además que ese cambio lo pueda producir el pueblo a través de los representantes que elige para ese cambio, es un hecho inédito, y por eso que estamos con tanta expectativa, por eso que se peleó tanto en las calles también, en el octubre pasado, en octubre de 2019, y ahora esa posibilidad puede ser real, o sea, puede realmente suceder a fines de octubre. Entonces, claro que para nosotros es muy emocionante y obviamente que tengamos apoyo, no solamente en nuestro país, sino que a nivel internacional de este proceso democrático, es muy alentador y es muy importante para un pueblo y un país que ha estado tan dañado, no solo por la represión del 2019, sino que hoy día también, producto de las muertes que hemos sufrido, producto del confinamiento en esta crisis sanitaria, es también una salida que nos permite iniciar realmente una nueva etapa, un nuevo proceso. Después de tanta represión, tanto sufrimiento, es algo para nosotros muy, muy importante. Me gustaría preguntarte, Roger, sobre la salud mental. Bueno, la locura es necesaria muchas veces en la vida, pero nosotros acá, después del estallido social, después de las mutilaciones, la represión, la violación sistemática a los derechos humanos que sufrimos tan solo hace unos meses atrás, vino la pandemia, el confinamiento, las muertes. Ahí está muy delicada la situación desde el punto de vista de la salud mental de las personas, de las madres solteras, por ejemplo, de los niños que no están yendo a la escuela, que ya llevan meses encerrados en sus casas. ¿Qué mensaje quizá podría enviar no solamente a las personas en Chile, sino que en el mundo, para poder mantener de alguna manera la fuerza y no volvernos locos después de todo esto? O que sepamos manejar esta situación de la mejor forma posible en relación a la salud mental. Y quizá con eso también preguntarte qué estás haciendo tú con el confinamiento, con la cuarentena, tus proyectos, estás viendo series, películas, libros que quizá quieras recomendarnos, porque obviamente hay que ver también la parte humana y cada uno está viviendo a su manera la cuarentena, el confinamiento, esta crisis a nivel mundial, y es bueno de repente también tener herramientas a mano que uno pueda también transmitir al resto para poder enfrentar de la mejor manera, cuidándonos físicamente, cuidando nuestra salud, pero también nuestra salud mental. La cabeza es muy importante en estos momentos y yo creo que muchos y muchas en Chile quisieran, de tus propias palabras, saber si hay algún consejo al respecto.
Well, I suggest nothing. I have no alternative. You get a bit madder than you already are. It's network. It's, it's like Howard Beale. You throw the window open and you go, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. And or whatever. What else can you do? the cacerolazo, you bang your pots and pans, you keep, when you can go back in the street, you go back in the street, you keep demonstrating, you keep whatever. If you have this light at the end of the tunnel, which is the possibility to have a new constitution. By the way, it's 47 years since 1973. I don't know when Pinochet wrote the new constitution, but yeah, well, that is the light at the end of the tunnel, and let's hope that he doesn't manage to subvert the movement towards that, which I assume came from the left. It doesn't sound like something that would have come from the right. And so it's a demand from the left. So it must in part be a product of all the protests and of everything, and of the resistance towards the maintaining of the status quo, which is the worst thing that could happen, is to be maintaining the existence of a constitution that was imposed by a military dictator in 1989 or whenever it was. So you have to just keep, obviously, you just got to keep doing what you're doing, and see if the people can force this in fruition and not be sidetracked by anything, because the ruling class will throw everything that they can to distract your attention. Every smoke screen. They may even throw you a bowl of sweets occasionally, anything to stop you actually trying to create a semblance of what we would call a democracy. And obviously, you have to get rid of this constitution before you can have anything that you can even begin to think about calling a democracy. So, or what can I say? I'm actually. This is news that's made me very happy. I know you've brightened up my day. The sun's come out. Wow, Chile might have a constitution that the people have agreed to. How cool is that? What a great model that might be for the rest of the world. You know, I'm reminded of something I wrote in the opera I wrote about French Revolution. There were two lines that I sometimes quote. One is about, there's a verse in it that a priest actually sings, and he sings, tears like falling rain, slake the thirst and douse the flames, and cooling in the crucible, an idea forms, a nugget of belief in the hearts of the poor, that maybe in the dawn's new light, they have a right to the law. Well, that's what you're talking about in Chile with a new constitution. And there's one other quote I'm going to quote you from Sayre as well, and that is a man holding a child who's been wounded in a demonstration in the Champ de Mars. Lafayette comes in and shoots everybody, and this kid's wounded, and the guy sings, "If my child survives, he'll judge men by their deeds and not their smiles." That makes me think of Piñera and Trump and Bolsonaro and all the other rats whose deeds are despicable in every possible way. But they're good at bearing their expensive private dental health care teeth at the world and pretending that they mean you well. And we all know that they don't. They mean you nothing. They don't even see you. You're not even there. You're completely irrelevant to them. So it's an act, and it's an act that needs to be rejected and resistant. And we want to know what you, the people, want. We know that you want education and health and somewhere to live and enough food to eat for your children and their children and successive generations going into the future. And I know, and you know, that you're not going to get that from Piñera or Bolsonaro or Trump or Orban or any of the other tyrants all around the world. You're only going to get that if you can implement a sense of community in Chile, where every man and woman looks after every other man and woman and extends that beyond your national borders to all the other men and women in the human race, because that is the only thing that is sustainable for the future of this tiny planet.
Oye, pero nos conformamos al menos con un saludo o un llamado a la prueba para el 25 de octubre, que es el plebiscito nacional en Chile. Y el llamado es a aprobar una nueva constitución este 25 de octubre en Chile. ¿Tú le podrías mandar ese mensaje al pueblo de Chile?
Okay, well, there's one thing before I go that I really want to say, and that is with reference to this extraordinary, wonderful, revolutionary idea of the people of Chile endorsing a new constitution for your great country. I believe it's going to happen in October this year. On the 25th, there will be a plebiscite, and so for you to vote. I haven't seen a draft of this new constitution, but if it's replacing a Pinochet constitution, it can't be anything but a million times better. So I applaud you, Chile, for moving in this direction, and I'm putting October 25th in my diary right now, because I will be sitting on the edge of my seat waiting to see what happens. But I wish you well. I love your country. I've always loved coming there and performing. So all my best wishes, and any strength that I have in my heart, I share with you for your new constitution. Okay. On that happy note, I'm going to love you and leave you.
Muchas gracias, Roger. Muchas gracias, de verdad, por todo. Te escuché atentamente y mira, casi ni necesité hacer preguntas. De verdad, fue muy buena entrevista y es lo que hemos querido hacer desde acá, conectar mucho más la cultura con la política, porque la cultura y el arte es fundamental en todos los procesos de transformación políticas, sociales y económicas que necesitan nuestros países. Y te agradezco mucho entonces habernos dado todos estos elementos, todas estas reflexiones, todos estos análisis de lo que está pasando en el mundo desde una perspectiva muy humana. De verdad, muy agradecida por el contacto que ha hecho con nuestro país nuevamente. Sabemos que le tienes mucho cariño a Chile, a su pueblo, a Víctor, a Joan y a tantos luchadores en la política y en la música y en el arte, tanta gente que de verdad valora más tu trabajo. Así que nuevamente mil gracias por tu tiempo y bueno, te vamos a estar esperando de todas maneras, ya no de manera virtual, sino que de manera presencial. Esperamos que lo antes posible pueda estar en nuestras tierras.